This is a presentation for the staff and clients of Grandee Marketing, Kuching Sarawak in Malaysia. It's an adapted version of the presentations I made in April 2024. I hope you enjoy it. So this is a presentation about Gran Castillo, a brand of Spanish wines. So our first task is to put Spain physically and metaphorically on the map. This is a map of the Mediterranean Sea and the countries around it. You can see here the most well-known winemaking countries all close together. You've got Spain, you've got France, and you've got Italy here, but also many other countries in Europe that can produce wine. If you see here, these two green lines are the zone where wines can be produced. Moving a little bit further north all the time, so even the bottom of England is in that map, and a little bits outside there as well, like Lebanon and Israel can also produce wine. How did wine get to be spread all around the Mediterranean? Well, the origin of wine, or the oldest known wine production areas from archaeological sites, are in Georgia and in Persia. But the real expansion came about 3,000 years ago when the Phoenicians, who were in what is today Lebanon, learned how to navigate through the Mediterranean and first of all began to trade with wine before finally setting up colonies and introducing the culture of wine into many different parts of the country. For example, here, this is an old wine cellar in the very south of Spain. And then the Phoenicians taught the local people, the Iberian cultures, the Iberian tribes, how to make wine as well. And then eventually the Romans arrived and continued to produce and trade with wine. So that's 3,000 years of wine history in Spain. So it's a really deep part of our culture. The other thing that is a very deep part of our culture gives the name of the brand. Gran Castillo is a brand based on the word Castillo, which means castle in Spain. And there are many different types of castle in Spain. There are about 10,000 castles and palaces from many different eras in different regions. So you've got down in the south, this one in Malaga, which is on the very south coast. The origins are Phoenician, and then Arab, and then medieval. Then up in the north, in Navarra, you have a castle which was built in the 10th century. And then a couple of castles from the east of Spain, from Almansa and from Alarcón, which were military castles right up into the 18th century. Today, what have left of those castles, all of them are ruins, but some are you can visit as monuments. Some have even turned into hotels or restaurants. In the town of Requena is where Gran Castillo is made. And even in Requena, there's a small but quite impressive castle at the very centre. And I'm going to show you now where Requena is in terms of winemaking in Spain, because it's at the centre of a little area where 3 different grape varieties are grown. In the centre of Spain, which is high and flat, you get mostly a grape variety called Tempranillo. Then in the northeast, along the Ribera, beginning in the famous region of Rioja, you have another grape variety which is grown mainly and it's called Garnacha. And then in the southeast, where it's very dry and very arid, you get another grape variety called Monastral. Here you can see that Requena is placed precisely between these 3 areas and on an area of the Valencia region which is going up towards the central high plain of Spain. So there you have the possibility to grow many different types of grapes in a relatively small area, which allows us to produce a full range of different wines. So let's see how wine is grown, and you can understand the relationship between fruit, sweetness and acidity and how that comes about. And the fact that in Requena you can get many different types of grape. Grapes are grown in a climate which is mostly dry, and it's not too hot, not too cold, which means usually it's not grown directly on the coast, and it's grown at the very highest areas. So it's grown between the coast and the very highest areas of the country. And the whole process begins in the winter when we cut off all the growth from the year before and just leave a basic trunk and enough shoots to produce somewhere between 8 and 12 bunches of grapes per each vine, per each plant. First of all, the first shoots, after we've pruned in February, cut off all the old growth, the first shoots start to reappear in the early spring, about now, at the beginning of April, and then the plant starts to grow very, very quickly. And by the end of July, it's already grown between 1 and even up to 2 meters high, depending on the amount of water available. And you can see on this photograph that the grapes are already formed. In May, there's a flower, and this flower is pollinated, and that produces all the little grapes. But at this point, at the end of July, they're still very green, very hard, and very, very acid. Then very quickly, at the beginning of August, all of a sudden, the grapes change colour in a very surprising way. It takes about 1 week. The grapes turn from green to red. The same process happens with white grapes, but it's not so visible. And the plant stops growing now. And all of the photosynthesis, all of the work of the plant, now goes into ripening the fruit. And ripening simply means the process of turning the acid, those very acid green grapes, into sweet, ripe red grapes, producing more sugar as time goes by and decreasing the acidity. The question is then, when do we want to harvest? When do you want to pick the perfect time when the acidity and the sugars are balanced? There are many different ways of deciding when to harvest. One of the ways is simply to crush the grapes in your hand and see how easily the colour is released. Nowadays, of course, there are more modern methods where they analyse each individual grape. They take individual grapes from many different bunches and analyse the sugar content. And they also check, as you can see on the back of the hand here, how ripe the pip is. In other words, the pip of the grape, if it's still green, the grapes are not quite ripe yet. They need to be properly brown, starting to turn to wood, and the stalk as well. So here you have a little image of a harvest going on at the very highest area in the region of Requena. So these vineyards are about 800 to 900 meters above sea level, and in the distance you can see the central plain of Spain. So this is one of the more traditional grape varieties like Tempranillo or Bobal. Now you've got grapes, you've got the possibility to make a rich, fruity wine and give a really enjoyable experience to our clients. So what wines are produced with Gran Castillo? Well, you can see there's quite a wide range, and you can see that there are basically 4 different types. You've got white wines, rosé wines and red wines, and then also sparkling, which here are usually white or rosé. The production method for white wines is fairly simple. The grapes are picked and then they are pressed, as you can see here, and then the juice on its own will be fermented. There's no aging process for white wines. It simply goes straight from the tank into a stabilization tank, and then from there straight into the bottle. For red wines, the key difference is the fact that the skin contains all the colour, and we need the skin to be present during fermentation. So instead of pressing to remove the juice, we simply crush the grapes, break the skins, and that allows the colour to be absorbed into the wine during the fermentation process. Those wines then more often go into barrels. Most of the Gran Castillo wines do not go into barrels, they go straight into a tank, but some of them do spend some time in an oak barrel before then going on to be filtered, as you can see the filter here, and then bottled. The range of Gran Castillo wines is divided a little bit by sweetness. The entry-level wines, the medium sweet wines, are a range of red, white, rosé with different grape varieties, both traditional like Tempranillo or international grape varieties like Cabernet Sauvignon Syrah, which have adapted very well in certain parts of the region around Requena. Above those wines, there are some family selection wines, which are wines which are selected grape varieties, which have a little less sweetness in them, but more structure, more tannin. Then there'll be a new range of wines which are also medium sweet. These wines are aimed with a new packaging to offer a more exciting experience for younger wine drinkers. And then finally, there's a new range of dry wines which do not contain any special sugar content. And then finally, you've got Gran Mirador, which is a development of the Gran Castillo brand. The Mirador is the very top part of the castle, so as you can understand, this is a top, more prestigious part of the range. Mirador simply means the lookout, so you're talking about a place which is at the very top part of the castle. Then you've got sparkling wines. Sparkling wines are produced by making a first wine, first of all, a dry wine, a base wine. That is then mixed with more yeast and more sugar, and that allows a second fermentation to take place. But this takes place in a closed container, so that the fermentation changes sugar into alcohol and carbon dioxide. So here you've got the carbon dioxide being produced again, but in this case, because the container is closed, it has nowhere to go. It's retained within the wine, and under pressure, it turns into tiny bubbles. That's your sparkling wine. It goes straight from there to a filter and straight into a bottle. And Gran Castillo has a range of 3 sparkling wines like these, and then a special wine, the Gran Castillo Ice, which can be served on ice. Thanks very much for listening. This was a shorter presentation than the one I gave in Kuching. I hope it's been useful for you, and if you have any questions or comments, I'm more than willing to take them from you. Bye-bye.